Sanje, Cheda, Soja, Sona,
Sonam Janju Badu Dagni Gapsuchi, Yogi Chunin Gibe Jotambi, Jolam Panja Sange Rupar So,
Sanje, Cheda,
Chodam Soki Jonam Janju Badu Dagni Gapsuchi, Yogi
Sanje,
Chunin Gibe
Sanje, Sona,
Jotambi, Jolam Panja Sange Rupar So,
Sanje, Cheda,
Rodam Soki Jonam Janju Badu Gapsuchi, Yogi Chunin Gibe Jotambi, Jolam Panja Sange Rupar So.
Stayanta, and Gate,
Gate para sum gate body
Stayanta, and
gate para sum gate body
Stayanta,
Dayata gate para sum gate body
Ola Suta, do you do the Shichan Tassim Tamjaga to Topjalana Majeva Sanjay Komar and Bochini Tobacha. The Janju Samba Labda, Trisha, and Lawa, Shingle, similar to a traditional Manoa to go to, and Kasuba Logic shooting yes, the Kombasha.
And as normal, we begin by setting a sincere motivation that we will do whatever we possibly can to attain the peerless state of enlightenment to benefit all living beings. And then knowing that to attain such a state, I must really perfectly accomplish the trainings on the Bodhisattva path. To do that in turn, I need to have a very good understanding of what they are. And to gain that understanding, I must be able to rely on a reliable text, a reliable source of information. And so it is with this in mind that I am here to listen to a mind training talk or teaching today. And then, as usual, as well, we set up the merit fields, which is completed by the figure of our own, the reality of our own root guru in the aspect of the thousand-armed, thousand-eyed Chenrezig in the space in front of us.
What the compassion and the Lama City and the Kazatula Takancha and the ranking was Shambatan and the Tagan sugar and the rank Jusum Savi gets a twin and a bit and it had a me and Choba, but that tire much better. Don't look at Doncha Jidenga, Tamja and the content, took you much never check. And the Lama City, Joe Jama, Tuga Honda, you were said to me, and the Shingram and never. Touching them done the Yeshiva Gent and the nigger, and Lama combat the Yeshiva Gent and the nigger. That said, Lama Jeresi, and a tiller, and a tip, and the Yeshiva was short, and Uncle had to get Uncle, Tree Lama Jesu never let, and because of the Taka the Yawa Bami, which much. What did you call
So we can then, imagine, visualize too, that in the space around and in front of the central figure of Lama Chenrezig, that there are countless offerings made, both real and imagined, that we can imagine all of the wonderful objects found in the celestial being realms and in the 3,000 world systems, that we can offer all of what is there in the space in front of Chenrezig, and that we then imagine that the figure also is marked by the at the crown, at the throat, and hung at the heart. And from the hung at the heart, light rays emanate, entering into all of the pure realms, inviting all of the wisdom beings and the pledge beings, and that the wisdom beings come, dissolve into the figure. And then the pledge beings, they give empowerment, empowering with the empowering nectar to the crown, and through the overflowing of that nectar is established the figure of Amitabha on the crown of Chenrezig.
What did I say? And the Ranga Tagoto and the Betaka, that Sengamaja, Toma Mabana, and Ranga, and Takiawa Kadishla, and Tetakanga, and the Randa Yamto to use some such a Teta myself. and type of my guess in the town, Jetta, said the Pamane, Jebeta, type of my guess in the Mason Neverton. You saw the water in the commercial. The data that you on Jama to a horse, you so good what the commercial.
Then we visualize in the space all around us first of all, our own rebirths, whatever rebirths we have had since beginning this time, and that we visualize that they are all present all around, inclusive then of all sentient beings, of the countless number of sentient beings without exception. They are all here as well in the space surrounding us, and each of them is marked by the syllables hum, hum.
What the commercial and to reduce to Noshi Bagaya, Namang Narad Nashan and the Chicago Lava Cheresla, Taweta, Yichigata, one to get our loss of, but two you think it's what the commercial. So to the Lama Cheres set over the time the Lama Cheres set up the utility. What is commercial?
And then all of these sentient beings are, of course, the denizens of their particular rebirths in the 6 realms of existence, in cyclic existence. But that, even though that is the case, they are able to cognize as human beings, as we ourselves are. And so they are looking towards the figure of Chen Rezig and have that visualization of the merit field of Chen Rezig, just like we have, seeing the figure marked by Om Ah Hong, and also they also having that triple sense of faith towards that figure, the faith of conviction, the manifest faith and pure faith.
Rane Jiba Taiba, my just in the town, Jigata, Tamjan, Jedes, double the Susu, so the Jedes Susu, so the water no commercial, and there, Lakanjig, Semjala maybe Ninja, Lama Jedes, and Bear, Gui in the Sungu in the 2 in the Chilag in the last of Tensul, and Bear, they never don't check what in the check commercial, and what I can check because Yala to my mandate what is that? Because she wanted to say that the Nangle Medabata, Choco, that Lamajeris high number is that the Chamazu associated that Chamazu Kayamarabu, Lamajeris, I bet to her and it's to be Robert Tayaba turn and come to the Simja Tamjala Papa to and to be Robert Digeti and because of that. Because of that, what in the same thing to the good theater, because of that, theater, Taganisha, Chicago, and Choco, who had to get your choice. What are the then some of the Yana to a mandate at Jamapu? What in the check?
So that, like ourselves, then, that all of the kind mother sentient beings, without exception, that we are visualizing in the space around us, have that same awareness, same attitude, the understanding that Chen Rezig is the object of refuge for us, that they kind of like, and we see them as being able to appreciate the enlightened qualities of body, speech, and mind, and enlightened activities of a Buddha like Chen Rezig, and therefore have that sense of absolute faith, conviction in the efficacy of Chen Rezig. And so, and with that in mind, then we begin the offering of the 7-limb practice and the offering of mandala. And as was explained before, that in place of the limb of requesting the Buddhas to not to enter a parinibbana, here, of course, because we're offering to Chen Rezig, it's that we again encourage or pray that Chen Rezig will continue the work of emanating to benefit all countless sentient beings without exception, and to provide happiness for them, to turn the wheel of Dharma, etc., etc. And in this way, then we engage in the purification and of negativity and the accumulation of.
What in the compensation? And when I got that Yala to a message for the jealous to do the Teatro, they don't want the Teatonius where she gives us the water, the Negabachi, they catch me, but what the chap? Yes, hello.
Sangha?
this what the conject because of the was the Yala to amended the Java Puma Delatena and the Jedes to you the Dewato, they were talking about yet. They don't use the she just was a delegate, they catch him, but what did I say?
And that quite important then at the conclusion of this particular stage of practice, having offered the 7-limbed practice and mandala, is that this is we see this as being very pleasing to the figure of Chenrezig. They experience a bliss combined with the voidness, and they abide in the wisdom born during bliss and voidness. This is quite important.
Oh, that is Lama Jeres commission Bengane. What that cousin when it's some the cavalier.
So, Tikje Nishu Zani, Gene Nangwa, Deda Rangi Sem.
Oh, yeah. Dollars. So, what that can judge cousin didn't get to get that. Teacher do Caseta. Can you Kuzo Janjuga Sem that when that Janjuga Sem Singata, Semjela. Chita Semjela, Casoda. Number Semja the Juba Semja. And it Semja said, Taganation get chigger, and it Daganation get checkers of Kuzo Janjuga Sem Singata. Don't that Janjuga Sem Singata today. What that Napsha you are, what in the end, that Kazan Yaman yard to tell the dog, but the Kuzo Janjuga Sem. Kujo Janjuga Sem, Chita check. That day, and only to that Janjuga Sem, to that Janjuga Sem, and Janjuga Sem, the Casoda, Janjuga Sem gets Simbetone, Janjuga Sem gets Simbetone, and the Tony Tower Committee. Tony Tower Committee, to that Janjuga Sem Sigur, Tomani said you never shot your water. What the and to that Janjuga Sems. What did the check? Cousin Taka, Tony Sunday Jogudu, and Tony Sunday Jogudu, and the Casoda Taka Judge. Sonam so the issue for food ten and Sankia Yorba. That the name into and because Semjala, the Kujo Simja, the Tondam Semjas, Tonda Semjas, the Janjuga Semjas Simbe, Tony Tobe Shara Gungala Tonda Semjas, Janjuga Semjas Simbe, and Tony Tobe Sheratilla, and Tondam Semjas Yorba. What that is, the regular judge, what they will try and forward to check.
So we are aware of the terms relating to the mind of enlightenment, where we discuss it in terms of conventional bodhicitta or mind of enlightenment and ultimate mind of enlightenment. We also know about in the kind of a developing of that mind of enlightenment itself, there is the aspirational aspect or aspirational bodhicitta, and then engaging bodhicitta. And so thus far in this text on the 37 practices of bodhisattvas, we have been discussing the mind of enlightenment in the context of conventional mind of enlightenment. And now we're going to go into the ultimate mind of enlightenment aspect. And so this is really where the mind of enlightenment itself is imbued with the view of emptiness. And this is important in the context of really completing what are known as the two accumulations, the accumulation of merit and the accumulation of wisdom, which lead ultimately to the state of Buddhahood. And so here it seems that in the former, the merit accumulated by the mind of enlightenment itself solely is kind of contributes to the accumulation of merit. But when imbued with the view of emptiness, those actions then can add to the accumulation of wisdom. And so both are important, of course, to attain the full state of enlightenment. And so verse 22 reads, "Whatever appears is your own mind. Your mind from the start was free from fabricated extremes. Understanding this, do not take to mind inherent signs of subject and object. This is the practice of bodhisattvas."
그래. 다 간제 단도 공개 단도 소에 다와데 샘잠베 다와 시작의 소도와 샘잠베 다와 쓰다 치료도 뭐 좋아지 간가 아니 지금 유난데데 아니 가서 다 간제 랑게 셰베 제수 좋아지 셰베 다니 맞지 어떻게 다 간제 출로네 다 간제 지금 나왔대 담자 샘게 안다 다니 맞지 와다 샘게 다니 맞지 가서 간제 지금 근데 가서 다 간제 지금 근데 치료 단데 계적 로티다 유게 로티다 치료 유니티 아니 가서 다 간제 샘게 다니도 좋아지 샘게 다니도 좋아지 와다 我的小店内的七六鱼，然后的猪八就要嘛，这七六鱼的猪八就要嘛，对了，那常常他的这个常常多了平个嘛，常常喇叭多了平个嘛，我打的真的，大概就告诉的，大家就告诉的，大家就告诉的，希望用猪，滚大个确实。希望的用住滚大个确实，大概这我真的，曾经送给南下就送过月的，曾经送给南下做的，我大概这其中个个人拿对吧？对，他们这按照西边大年了做吧的是，西边大年了做吧应该是，但真的现在其中的个有按照让个做吧，说的就要嘛的是，伊拉没这吧的，你解释个哪里意思？我说，他感觉这个他。那他说汤酒呗，对吧？那些结巴人呢，他感觉就跟着就拿话一把人那样，其那个确跟着结巴呢，预定的做吧的，就咱们要嘛的事，都在怕他咱们的事。我这怕他咱们，俺伊拉结巴的，俺解释哪里意思？我说他怕他咱们，我这，汤酒呗，打我个恐怕写下呢，我这写，
And so the source of this verse appears to be coming from the mind-only tenet school, or the Chittamatra tenet school of thought, whereby everything is viewed in terms of being created by or appearing in the mind itself, that there are no external objects, that the appearance of an object actually begins and ends with what is actually appearing in the mind itself, and that this is the way this verse is written. And so, in terms of the mind-only school, discusses the phenomenon in terms of those that are imputed, other-powered, and then ultimate objects. And so, from our point of view here, looking at it from the Prasangika, Madhyamika Prasangika, or the consequentialist school of thought, that tenet school, we ought to read this verse really simply as being whatever appears here, just in general, whatever appears is that which is lacking any objective existence and is merely imputed by thought. And so that brings it kind of like in line with the Prasangika thought.
然后做吧，俺的伊拉没结巴的，然后的做吧，那我那些有点的嘛做吧，那也有点的做吧，那个那我但是俺的有点的做吧，可是呢，有点做嘛真吧，伊拉有点做吧，伊拉没结巴，有点的嘛做吧，伊拉结巴，你解释个哪里意思？我得解释个哪里意思？我这是恐怕些呢，这盲目摸着经常处着你还有的，那么就盲目就，看就把西下说啊，对了呀，刚刚就是可是那样。 치료는 가와 본발라서 봐 요마를 쓰기 요마데 얘네야 가와 본발라서 봐데 딱지 제바 이나 이거 뭐도와 많이들 가서 셰베 다니도 좀 레스 딱지 제도 많이 받아 지고 와 딱지 제어도 이거 요마래 많이 받다 라와는 마주 버렸어 이 가서는 셰베 다니도 좀 받다시 제어도 아니 가서 다가 셰베 뭐원데 좀 되지 先把那出差这个去，差这个去我这个想，大概这大概那边呢，看就别到这个上了当了， 파 지난 게 근데 저 나와 임바 이나야 난데도 유대의 주바 난게 요르데 이내 유대의 주바 두자 요마르스 유대의 주바 두자 메단의 가르스는 거 때내 딱 말해 와스 유대의 주바 임바이나 때내 딱 버터사 요마르와 때내 딱 버터사 메바 인사 때내 딱 버터바 인사 거 유대의 주바 이나 때내 딱 거예요 요마르 때내 딱 거도 지라 때내 중고도 그 유대의 마주에 딱 된 요레스 근데 유대의 주바 아니 짐바티 녹색 차기 요바 인사 되게 sama 미제바 일라 미제바 데 아니 계속 라리 인스 저는 던지면 더 too much 좋잖아 어떻게 쳐
And so that the second half of that verse, understanding this, do not take to mind inherent signs of subject and object. This is the practice of bodhisattva. So it's important here to kind of not over elaborate on this verse, as a great deal could be said on the differences between the mind only point of view and the Prasangika and Madhyamika Prasangika point of view. And so we don't want to enter into that simply to say that, say, from a mind-only point of view, one might observe how phenomena, even though they appear to exist independently, do not. But they then would conclude that is because they are of the nature of mind. And so this is the mind-only point of view. Whereas from the Prasangika point of view, they start off in the same way. Say that yes, though that all external phenomena appear as if they existed independently or objectively, but when one enters into analysis of that, one finds that they do not have that status of existence. They do not exist in that way, and they exist only in dependence on being imputed by thought. And so they move a great deal further from simply being an object of mind. And so this is the reading here. So that whatever appears from the Prasangika point of view, whatever appears is completely empty of inherent existence, merely imputed by thought. Understanding this, do not take to mind any inherent signs of subject and object. This is the practice of bodhisattvas.
건제 저 가서 단단데 된데가 돈이게 유대의 주다 뭐죠 제바 탈라 아니 각자 각점 되가라 봐 셈찬 다 장주가 셈게 셈제 탐제도 산제 고마 주바 지긴 있어 로 지게 로데게는 장주가 셈된데 지게네 셈디 셈베 토네 다 간제 저 유라 제바체나 유 많이 받다가는 갈 아니 가자 가점 되가라 셈 샤데나 보다 간제 지 셈 샤네 샤데 받들라 다 간제 지 가서다 다 간제 지 가서다 다들 디스기로 다 간제 자주 가서 다 지금 대대 돈이 워서도 또도 고저 또다 자주가 셈제 생기로 왔다 대대 돈이 워서도 또도 봐 중앙이나 대대다 자주가 셈 또다 자주가 셈
So here, when we're encouraged, of course, that when in looking into the doctrine of emptiness and really getting to that point of the mere negation of the object of negation, we really have to endeavor to begin that analysis whilst reflecting on the mind of enlightenment itself, so that that our analytical intention is imbued with the mind of enlightenment. And so there, when we examine the object in that sense, it's really analyzing for looking for that objective existence with which it appears, but therefore thereafter not finding it and merely ending up with that mere negation of the object of negation, leading to that inferential understanding and ultimately a direct realization of emptiness. We want to be able to do so whilst our analytical intention is imbued with the spirit of enlightenment or the mind of enlightenment. And so that becomes then a bodhisattva practice.
아니 되네 제도가 내가서 다다다 이동후에 유다 태바나 이야기 되게 자주 지신도 제바나야 담발 미다치 신자보와 계서 라리스 다 간제제 아니 제도가 내가서 이동후에 유다 이동후에 유다 태바나 이야기 되게 자주 신도 아니 제바나야서 다 간제제 인도하다 야고리 나가 이나야 담발 미다시 대다 유대는 주와 미다네 and change up what and cancel is what
So the verse, the next verse, verse number 23. When you encounter attractive objects, though they seem beautiful, like a rainbow in summer, don't regard them as real and give up attachment. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. And so this refers to the kind of like subsequent attainment part of meditation. So we have that sense of meditative absorption, where we're directly focusing on emptiness, the realization of emptiness, and then arising from that meditation, then when in the post-meditative time, we are engaging in recognition of objects and relating to objects that are appearing. Here the advice is that in that particular case, we kind of encounter attractive objects, though they seem beautiful, like a rainbow in summer. We have to regard them, don't regard them as actually inherently existent or objectively existent. And so it's encouraged us to develop that habit of bringing what we have understood or realized in the meditative state to the post-meditative state, when we're kind of engaging in life again, that we are no longer adhering to the way things appear. And so we're questioning and saying that things, though they appear like this, say attractive or even non-attractive, and that they are don't exist the way they appear, they are unreal.
네, 다간제 말아서 지금 말아서 내당보이네 튠다 튠삼니 차오데 나샤다 튠가서다 장주가 셈 가서도 야세 담니 아니 장주가 셈 담니 아니 장주가 셈티 심베 권에 다간제 지금 동 가서 유는 제바제네 아니 제바제네 아니 그다 유대는 주다 마주 제바제네 아니 제바제네 많이 베타드가 셈샤네 다 가제네 도도네 되네 튠삼소 아니 근데 지금 상해 근데 나와 있네 아니 딜 가서 다이 창당 로마게 왔잖아 이 가서 창당 로마게 왔잖아 간제다 상해 근데 나와 있네 이 가서 다 간제 지금 상부 있네 다 지금 가서다 가서 다 가서 자주는 시대네 대마 매바치 유대는 매바치 어때 내가 이바이데 지금 지잖아 봐 딜레야 창당 가서 당에 로기고 여자 안 딜레야 지나시데 전에 가서다 대마 매바치 대마 매베 배트 자잖아 아니 근데 좋아이네 아니 가서다 가자죠 차당게 아니 다저 로방 투었잖아 차당에 로기에데 유대는 두번나 안 딜레쯤발때는 아니 가서데 야가 통데 차바게 아니 두가 통데 아니 다지 가서데 제나라서 마가라서 깨고 여봐 왔다 디겐데 그 보아데 계산라리스 어디서다 그저 가서데 통비 내가서 꼭 검지 자야쳐도 인바 인사 아니 거기 춘잠소야 아니 디다 춘바잖아 디다 춘바잖아 교육경에 있다 디 지스바잖아 저에 되게 좀 이마라 아니 디 아니 가서다 다간자 다간자 도바기라 아니 거기 통계 자오고 와 근데 저와 요바잖아 어디죠 뭐다 다가 튀는 차이가 홀리데이 있으면 맞죠 아니 디 지스바잖아 그 소리야 어디 세다 뭐 계산하네
So say this is really relating to us as beginners here, that the advice is that we try to retain a connection between what we were doing in the session time to the between session time. And so this is very important for us. So whether we are looking into emptiness and we're doing that imbued with the mind of enlightenment, viewing the object, analyzing whether that object exists objectively or not, and the understanding of that then brought to mind in the post-meditative state, or the in between the sessions, that when we're in more kind of normal mind, that we are kind of aware in the back of our mind that the objects that are appearing to our mind, can bring forth these attitudes of attachment and aversion, depending on whether we see them as good or we see them as bad. And we have to understand that this is the attitude of mind that we need to abandon to overcome. And so that that this attitude of attachment to what we see as good or regard as good, aversion to what we see as bad, and so on, is counterproductive to what we're trying to do within the session. And so here we need to develop this harmony between the state of mind we're in the session and the between session times, that there must be some connection there. So this is the verse here, that when in the post session time objects will appear like this, the attractive objects will encourage attachment, the non-attractive objects will encourage aversion. Here, do not fall into that trap, as it were, saying, and do not adhere to the way things appear, but retain the consistency of not buying into the appearances, the objects in the way that they appear. And so this is to counteract the kind of tendency that we might have to put a big effort in during the session, but then as soon as we're finished and we get up from that, we think, oh, great, holiday time, I don't have to pay attention anymore. It's saying here, no, you have to try and maintain that connection.
What is that? Yido mod what link to naso milan pushitas. Tuna temper so atanche. Echi midu can the tebetse tuba tawa jesela is.
And so whereas verse 23 was centered on the beautiful of the objects that seem to be attractive, alluring, in verse 24, it deals with more or less the opposite of that. All forms of suffering are like a child's death in a dream. Holding illusory appearances to be true makes you weary. And therefore, when you meet with disagreeable circumstances, see them as illusory. And this is the practice of bodhisattvas.
Tunga naso milan pushitas. Tuna temper nawa atanches. Takanja jigum. Ganja jig was the misoba that social decane misoba yoete, then the casoda. Casoda. General was a pena social casoda, the Pimpijana, Tobotomo, and washing by that, and then you count to the social semi what I semi Kanglish, you had you good one. In at the cartel, you were so was it temper to what's in your Yorba. Number two, but say, and it did you the uniform Masubakan. Can you not take Mara Mitak for a lagu? Same thing, Tiria Shigamare, Tiria Shigamare, Tiria Shigamare, Yana, Tiria can take Mara, same thing, but you are about Tembochi. Go, you can do machine. You won't take your one. That right. Tungan so Milan push it as Milan push one. Rokasa de Chicago, Shada, Tuna, Dember, so Atancha started the Tube now at the Dember, so anything, they let any coach don't have the coach to get from the unequal Kanga de Leon, what I can't let the might give a chill. But they have no tongue chairs on your party. Atancha, teach Mutu cannot tell it at that, Mutu getting the tender, Tuban Tower gets a lally starting. And the Casorata Chubata, you didn't know Majuba Tower. That gets a lally is that because you didn't know what you get some of the net on the Jumo Gurwata. Net on the Jumo, what 이제 초원들 그 내단데 주고 그랬다 주바 따와 계산 라리스 단 얘네도 주하면 왔대 뭐 내가 듣고 주바리 되어 주바 따와 이제 계산 라리스
So of course, you know that there are times when we meet with unbearable suffering, such as when relatives or friends or dear people belonging to us die, and that, of course, we're very, very sad. And so that even though we may kind of like have this attitude of kind of equanimity brought on by our understanding of this is a sign of impermanence, everything changes, we all must go, and so on. There is still this holding on to the situation as being truly established, truly existed, and that this contributes to kind of an exaggeration in that sadness that we feel or suffering that we feel there. And so kind of have this idea of a kind of an adherence to permanence, even though we might preach impermanence, so that we feel deep down that, today I won't die, or tomorrow I won't die, or next week I won't die. And so kind of like this betrays what we might have as an outward appearance in that time. So we have to understand that this sort of self-deception is kind of counterproductive, that as it says here, holding illusory appearances to be true makes you weary. In fact, the word's more like makes you exhausted. And so we really are at the end of our tether, with the kind of like having to live with the kind of mistaken attitudes we have like this. We're holding on to illusory appearance, and that even the very, very process of cause and effect, causes and circumstances, when they come together, and they give rise to suffering if they arise from non-virtue, and that is exhausting for us. And so therefore, when you meet with disagreeable circumstances, as it says there, see them as illusory being lacking any true existence, lacking any objective existence, and that this is the practice of bodhisattvas.
다 장주 대be 류자 동거나 체령업은 남라 메치고 대체 랜다 남의 미래에 집어도 와게살라리 있어. 뭐죠? 다 간제 다 제전에 저 가서래 저 가서래 가서래 다 간제 가서래 구조 선제게 다 되네. 아니 가서래 구조 선제제 아니 되는 선제제 아니 되네 전에 다 간제 되잖아. 아니 저서 퍼진도 나네 제고 요와 뭐다 저서 퍼진도 나네 저도다 퍼진도 나네 대마도 그래서 장주 대be 류자 동거나 치료고 남라 메치고 대체 랜다 남의 메레원 집어도 와게살라리 있어.
So up to this point, we've been looking at the development of, as we pointed out, conventional mind of enlightenment, and in the last several verses, ultimate mind of enlightenment. And so it's kind of as is the normal practice, having generated the mind of enlightenment, both in its conventional and ultimate sense, both in its aspirational and engaging sense. Then one enters into the six perfections, the practices of the six perfections, and this is where now the verses take us. And so verse 25 centers on the first of those perfections, the one of generosity, where it says, when those who want enlightenment must give even their body, there is no need to mention external things. Therefore, without hope for return or any fruition, give generously. This is the practice of bodhisattvas.
장주가 샘께온데 가서 샘쟁거 돌았다 랑게 룽아 유숨데 다 샘쟁을 표가 타고와 샘쟁을 다 제대로 잡으스그래 다 샘쟁이야 표니 다 간제 저 샘쟁거 돌다 간제 샘쟁거 돌 주베 체도다 가서 다 지금 월린터스그래 가서라 와다 전 다 표가 와다디 켈레 자주 다 가르스나 다 장주 귤어 저거도나 장주 톱게 주 가리네 다 랍기 있다 장주 톱에 귤어 저거도나 다 rang da lu da long da rang lu da long ju ge za de phong ba me ba dang go ju ane zhang ju de be da kan je rang lu da lu nga yi sum de ka cha za ba da sim je de ngo cha de ro da lu dong go na 치료 ngobon namla mejo da 치료 ngobo 되게 딱 다시 한번 와도 시험 다 되고 다 간자 지금 치료 ngobo 땅마도 그제 랑게 류가 다 류가 있어 계산 잡아 땅 두서 가고 싶어 다 당부 그착 최종 제발이나 소설 다 지금 치료 다 ngobol래 랑게 류라 또 착치기로 와 착치단죠 와 착치단치도 어제도 지도 딱 간자 류코라 땅고도 치료 ngobo 땅 메주 거서 대체 랜다 다 치료 ngobo 땅도 아니 땅와들라 아니 이게 되는데 다다 파지나 마음 바가 추든지 저와 요래 로바 용거에 섬자 저와 어떤데 그 삼로 내 봤잖아 랜다 나미가 저와 내 봤었다 랜다 나미가 저와 내 봤어 딜라테네 저 나미 기부 용거에 디기 용거에 섬자다 안 딩에 되는지 파지와 이나 딜rel정말 ngal shuk chbo jong ge sa da den de ra wa na mi me ge chi ba to o den de ge se gi da ji ba la zhuo den de ye ba chang bu ge su du ji ba to ge se la li ye cha wo den de she
So saying that in the course of our cultivating the mind of enlightenment, the generating of the mind of enlightenment, we will have come to understand that it involves and inherent and kind of like implicit in that practice is the giving up of our body, our possessions, and our roots of virtue to all sentient beings, without question and without hesitation. And so we kind of, in a way, we have already dedicated that ahead of time forward. We volunteered ourselves, we have taken on that commitment. And therefore, when it comes to generosity, as it says here, when those who want enlightenment must give even their body, there's no need to mention external things. And so we have, already in a way dedicated our own body, our own possessions, our own roots of virtue to the benefit of sentient beings. And that, when it talks about it, we understand that when the giving of our objects, our possessions would be somewhat easier than the giving of our body and so forth. But it's the practice of the bodhisattva to already have kind of factored that in. And so generosity to benefit sentient beings is the only kind of a prerogative for engaging in the act of giving. And so therefore it says, therefore without hope for return, in other words, that we don't give with some sort of expectation of payback, or that even in some time in the future, this will lead to our own happiness, or some sort of power will become more powerful or something like that. So there's no hope for return or any fruition of the virtue that we have created. And so we cannot kind of like invest in our acts of generosity with a kind of compromised motivation in that sense. And so it's saying this then is the kind of generosity that is the practice of bodhisattvas.
로데 베네 남주이나 뭐 지바땅 왔을 롱주 용거레스 오 당게 다리 지바땅은 아껴왔지만 아니 튕게 야고 용거레스 로다 기부 중국에 삼로 잡던 용적으로 와 기부 중국에서 다 겨왔지만 아니 튕게 야고 거나 아니 제들 지바땅 거레스 집에 롱주스 어쨌든 아니 팀기 돼서 로다 아니 주점 야고 소아이나 아니 겨왔지만 아니 먼저 그 콤바토 거레스 아니 세베 땅데 서바 고마이나 아니 인도 가부 통해 땅데 때마 용해 어떻게 용거래서 왔다가 이제 그 리트베 저부 용다 지어 봐 얘네 야 다다 장주 세베 냠래 세거도 왔다 소소라 된데 나와 촌을 매워 게 다리 된데 제반에 겨와치만가 뭐도 고마터 그래 아니 지지 용거를 어떻게 나와 매는지 뒤쳐도 돼 많이 심정가 더 바시게 쳐도 뭐도 고마지 나와 잡은 뒤에 심정가 되죠 아니 뭐도 고마리 마셔도 돼 심정가 돼 이거지 란데 이제 딱 교차고 봐 란데 이제 아니 가서다 아니 저만 매봐 고고요 봐 저만 매봐 고고요我的고고요 다 가서 내 당고에서 좀더 그 당고도 당고什么 상보제 什么 로바제 차데 저만 미디다 마찬가지로 차 아 미디가 소설 내발이 게는 아카 당연히 말 로바제마데 초도 좀 와서 이게 너샤 삼상에 삼로된데 가라서 연구도 안디 연대 대사 가라서 이게 로바제 지마땅 와데 다 잔주세베 지마를 천치야 말다 대과 재미철 천치야 말다 치야 말 what 다 내가 타바타베 가와 타베 저다 가져 다 패바 치 말아 뭐다 가서 세디마도 가야 살로 마당 게 세디마도 가야 살로 마당 게 지금 내가 저 와다 계속 소소 뭐 쳐봤잖아 뭐좀 미스나들 용해도 봐 삼삼 맞잖아 어디가 저 간제 수수 파로 과 제바데 소소 냠래 이 삼사죠 이게 패바 줘봤대 소소 냠래 소소 랭게 아까도 responsible 쓰다 어디 소소 랭게가 심지 탐제도 산제 고마 두고 여바 인사 애니 얘기 산제 고마 두에서 소사 지장의 체도 이 삼사 제바 이나 소수 된다 체도 산제 고마도 소수 된다 쓰야 어디에 써야 돼 아니 호텔 랜다 남인다 된도 요거 말아 봐 네가 될 바로 봐 제일 마찬가지 차서는 오다 니만 갈래 빼 튕게 야고 줘서 니만 갈래 전부 이등에 걸어로 봐 제도서 빼면서 야고 줘서 당내로 봐 제고서는 제 고급시라고 말해 가서 아니 다 전부 다 요 말어 봐서 또 나게 로바 제도 맞죠 많이 받잖아 다 니만 제도 봐 오다 야고 쉬우 총소 당에 제나 또 내가 그 고급 요 말이 삼삼 어때 내가 삼로 요 봐 이나 아니 랜다 남에 로바 메게 차기 와
And so here it's kind of like really pointing out how cleanly one must engage in the perfection of generosity for it to be counted as a bodhisattva action. And that here, when we give, we cannot have any kind of, how do you say, conditions on our generosity, thinking that, or perhaps, we'll become rich or and as a result of that, as it says in other kind of text where it says through discipline there's comes kind of contentment, through generosity one can accumulate possessions, through patience one becomes an attractive being. So these are looking at the kind of like the straightforward black and white cause and effect kind of like situations between the virtuous actions and what they will result as. But we cannot insert any expectation in our motivation. From our point of view, any act of generosity has to be really clean of anything like that. It's kind of stainless. An active reaction. So there's no sense of something for myself out of this, something that is kind of going to fulfill my own purpose out of this. Certainly not directly in any case. And so, and certainly not anything connected with the benefit in this life, and sometimes we even have situations where, we have in the past given help to somebody else. Then in the interim, the connection has been, broken, and we become unfriendly. And then, we have some sense of regret for that previous act of generosity. It's like, oh, I was so helpful to them in the past, and look how they treat me now. I do regret doing that in the past. And so this is a big mistake. We must never enter into this kind of thinking, in not any kind of thinking that's connected with the benefits to this life. Any kind of like worldly thoughts. We must think of, the idea, the opportunity to benefit another as being my practice. This is my responsibility. This is if there's any thought in there, one has to understand the kind of like objective of purifying all negativity, and the accumulation of all positive merit, that this may lead to, my attaining state enlightenment. Why? For the benefit of sentient beings. But one can afford to think just like this, but that should be something very minor. And so kind of like and also in relation to giving to person in the past where relations have broken down and things are not so good between you now, one can must rejoice in the previous act of generosity. That's the correct attitude to take, saying that that was really wonderful that I had that chance to give at that time. I feel really good about that. That's good. And that at the moment, with relations being quite frosty, I kind of have regret that I don't have that same opportunity to repeat that act of generosity or to continue with that generous attitude. So that's the correct way of thinking about these kinds of things.
Order. And then because the Dujun Rangi Luda Longe da Takasa Luda Longe and the Dusun Sabe Gexanum and the same just Rana Devan Shiki Mobula and that Mobula Jute and Mobula Juten Mobula Simjan Korala Kariko Waina. Nega Tadukura, the Mobula Part Junior. And then Junior and then they can go there to la Chasa Mavatina and Chakson Mavatina. Because that Chakson Mavatina and don't say Ben. Don't send Ben and then Jimmy Pages over Tingle of Swan, the Lamachavana and Jimmy Paging and Yamle and the Mutu Chet and what is watch it.
And so then, of course, we can elevate this practice as well.
Rangi sometime come chapter and Janju Simki Simbetone, Janju Simki, and the Dakata Simbetone, and Simbetone, and Rangi Dusum the Jeza to get the Ganga, and it's Simja Rana Sosolata, Nega the Tador Karakundi, and and it just part Juni. Della Panta what Junior, and it tell Pang Semba, the Kiki Mabachan, and because of that, or the General. Chapa Mavajan, Chaxem, the Mavajan, Tonsa Penny, and Tonsa Penny, and then they get Melaka in the Pages of a Chinking of Swan, the Shin, what did the general, what did the Kobashi check, what did it say?
So in a practice where we can engage in this particular style or particular way of giving, that we of course generate the mind of enlightenment, wherein we in our motivation to fulfill both all the temporary and ultimate needs of all sentient beings, I visualize giving my body, all my possessions, all my roots of virtue, to fulfill whatever needs sentient beings may have, whatever they could possibly need. And you visualize emanating those needs, those objects of their need, and they're receiving them as clearly as you possibly can, and ensuring that you're engaging in the practice completely free of attachment, free of any regret or holding back, and that then you have given all of your body, possessions, roots of virtue to all sentient beings, and then concluding with a sincere dedication of all that merit.
Chime Pages of a Tio, Kanja, Lama Chime, sick as Lama Chimenal, because of the pageant, then because of the Lamrim, then come down to Martin and pageant to Yamlet, the bad sick noble, sick bit of that digger, sick to Lola Robertson, and it's sick to and because that's some not done, and sent to the Jimba the German that sick to the Dungeon, sick to the $2 some not done, or that Jimmy Pages of a John Shores. What did it
Very good verses relating to this particular practice of generosity in the Guru Puja, and taking from the graduated path presentation of the practice of generosity or the perfection of generosity. It would be really good to include in one's practice the recitation of those verses, where in such a short few words, so much meaning is carried, that this can be quite inspirational for us, and so that we engage in this as kind of like part of our practice of the perfection of generosity, and dedicate as much as well as we possibly can.
다 간제 장주가 셈고 셈나다 저거 지바 당와도 저벌 나나면 봐도 셈고래 장주가 셈 마스마이네 셈제서 유케바잖아 지바 당와티 아니 지금 밀루와래 다 저버 체조라 빠와 용거래 가서는 레다 간제 저거 가서래 간제 저 가서래 랑게 롱체바 이나 롱체 아니 매버 차버래 시행라 지소나 소소 남일에 라와 유나면나 제부 용거래 시행라 지바데다 가서래다 가서래 저 가서래다 저기 싱갈 마소네 사베 따바타버래 지수 따달 사베 따바타 이나야 다 꿀로다 아니 저 가서래 저 꿀로 장주가 셈 심바야나 타베 심바야나 저 야와 치마 펜젤 심바자바는 것도 최를 토마토 켜바 주어면도 제대로 꿀로 마스바데 셀라 페바 주버스나 제부 밀로와데 상라 페바지 요거래 가스나 셀라 짐바티 디 제부 나민게 제부 집에 롱주스 짐바탕 와라 때는 롱주 용해야 돼 가서 됐다 가서 됐다 가자 룰러 로스르다 그래 다 랑게 롱체바이나 페나 사야 통에 롱체바 치체바이나 다 수불라 또 페나 펜바레면도 야와 줍세 요마레 다 롱체바들 때는 이게 롱체는 추죽투바 제바이나 나고 대부 용거리면도 롱체바 버랑 다 차버려 엔트레 시알라 제바티 무트의 제부 용대지 무트의 제부 용대지 술라 제바이나 다 유케바체이나 딜레페차 요구를 와다 이나 심제 인사베텔라 다 간제 제부 상부 요인 바 타쳐왔다 다 타베 줄라 주다 탐제케베 줄라 도모저는 거 꿀로라 알리그와 이네술로 가래
So when we are practicing according to the mind of enlightenment, really trying to generate that mind of enlightenment, that we see the sentient being to whom we are giving, for example, as an extraordinary object to give to. And so this is the way in which kind of like try to, how do you say, cultivate that perfection of generosity, that we really have to understand the kind of the value of, I suppose, each act of generosity. So, for example, when we have possessions and we use them ourselves, then we kind of, they are consumed by ourselves. They are used up by ourselves. And that's the end of it. So when we engage in giving to others those objects, that result can continue on into the future. Though we don't have that as kind of an upfront part of our motivation, that it is nevertheless the case. Even if we don't have any hope for a result, a ripening result will come. This is a part and parcel of the rule of law, the rule of karmic law. From generosity comes possession, and so this is what is the rule of law happens regardless of what we think. But it's important in the context of bodhisattva practice. Indeed, any kind of a practice, whether we have a motivation like that or not, that when we engage in an act of generosity, free of any expectation, that a positive ripening result will result. And so this is important, that when we are engaged in the perfection of generosity, that is, the mind is imbued with the mind of enlightenment and emptiness, that when we give to others, we are not thinking of the virtue involved here, but we're giving to others and hoping to give to all sentient beings. and that we understand that the motivation counts when we're having the goals of attaining liberation or the omniscient state of enlightenment. And so it's different to just giving without these motivations.
Tim Sudim Suayina and Modu Coma Topres and Saba Comaina and Dang Des and somebody Indo Habu Yogures. Indo Habu Yogures. What I got what the Taka Jet Casura Tap, the Casura Casura Tate, what I got that did Casura indicate was a natural law. The Sanjay Song the Chato Mare, called natural law, the Bayinza. Any Sanjay Gaza Haku, whatever, what did the task, whatever you but what. The Sanjay jingle up to what did the Chato, what did the Kamari, because natural law for what did it?
And so this process of generosity, you have to understand that in the context of it and other virtues, that where it has been prescribed by the Buddha, that through generosity comes, from generosity comes possession or wealth, from virtue, from discipline or ethical conduct comes a higher rebirth, from patience, so the practice of patience, comes an alluring appearance. This is the kind of the natural law of things, Sven is pointing out, not necessarily just because the Buddha said so. And so here we kind of understand that there is as it were, this a side effect to generosity in any case, but that's not what we have in mind in the context of the mind of enlightenment. And so that we give because we give to kind of like bring happiness to sentient beings.
Ta Sutim Meber Rando Mitumna, Sheno Juba Duba Gemine, Teche Sibe Duba Mebayi, Sutin Soa, Jasalali.
Verse number 26. Without ethics, you can't accomplish your own well-being. So wanting to accomplish others is laughable. Therefore, without worldly aspirations, safeguard your ethical discipline. This is the practice of bodhisattvas.
아니 되네 다 자주 선배게 남자지글로 자주 선배게 다 추점 연구래 다가는 상하 남자 상하 그런 나도 몇 추점 연구래 어떤데 연구래 어떤지 다 추점 매번 라운드 미저 다 지금 심마 잡고 좀 이게 주변 추점라서 어떤데 지 심마 지금 소마도 같이 이번에는 아니 다 현대다 파죠 라운드야 좀도 맞아 랑 먼저 공부하자 좀두고 말아 봐 먼저 공부 좀 라운드야 미주라 다 라운드 먼저 그제 다 현대 주고 있으나 다 좁랑게 소리 차버렸다 소소 그 맞아봐 시행콘 잡아 속에서 네 추천이 끼어 마신 거지 아니 미추나 사대가 추잡가 두고 있으나 다 소소 시가 두고 소리 차버렸다 너 그게 요 말와 더 되는 현대 주바도 개미네 다 되네서 현대 문제 주바도 인게 속에 아니 다 지금 추든 나바다바 소에디 계셔볼 대체 시베 tumba 다 되네 이바 인상 다 진짜 가서도 시베 tumba서 다 가서도 되게 그래서 겨와 치마 먼저 고마 좀 된대 저 된도니 된대다 야나 세들 되게 야니 겨와 치매기 되게 된대 지금 시베기 되게 떨어 된도 많이 받잖아 금방 매봐 이에서 금방 매봤잖아 땡기 좀 심지어 탐제가도 사제 고마 처음에 체도 대이 체도 아니 체도 소화되는 계획을 하려다 계획을 추정 선은 건지를 쓰기로서는 오다 심지어 탐제가도 사제 고마 처음에 체도다 미게 주보고 추정네 전에다 수저 켜라면 다 도마도 담제 건데 좀 오다 근데 수고들라 체도 소화되는 계획을 하려 있어 어떻게
So verse number 26 deals with the perfection of ethical conduct, whether it's the vows related to the three levels of Patimoksha, Bodhisattva, and Tantric vows, or the ethics of refraining from the 10 non-virtues, etc. This all includes here the perfection of ethical conduct. And that here, of course, the minimum of our motivation should be to attain a higher rebirth in the future as a human being or a celestial being in the desire realm. And they're saying that if without ethics, it says you can't accomplish your own well-being. And in this context, it's kind of like saying even that much, even to attain the kind of lowest motivation of a higher rebirth, is out of reach if you can't keep your ethics. So wanting to accomplish others is laughable, is a joke, he's saying. And the image is sometimes used of, that somebody is drowning and you jump in trying to save them, but you don't know how to swim. And so, you kind of like bring both of you down with that sort of attitude. So it's the same. If you have a bad ethical kind of attitude or bad ethical conduct, how can you possibly think of trying to influence others into virtue? And so here, therefore, it said without worldly aspirations. So therefore, it's kind of like really important that we don't have simply the kind of benefits of this life in mind when we're engaging in ethical conduct. That we have to have at least the positive rebirth in the future, or even beyond that, a better rebirth, at least that much. But in the context of bodhisattva's practice, of course, when we talk about safeguarding our ethical discipline, it is with the motivation of wanting to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. That mind of enlightenment itself is necessary. And this then is the ethical conduct is related to the practice of bodhisattvas.
不是，他跟着这个告诉的这个他把丢的那个他把咱们丢的那个钱吧呢，他把丢的那个钱吧那样，俺那拉巴松了，拉巴松了，他跟着这个现在个拉巴没把了，他把丢个嘛的，现在个拉巴等把了，俺那等个这个拉巴过来，等个这个拉巴养活去给把了。아니 추정을 라바 거래. 추정을 라바 매바 있나 땡가서 라바 께도 말해. 땡가서 라바 마면은 샤가 라바 께도 말해. 거다가 라바 숨고 냠내데 다거저 저기 남랭이 내사가 심하다고데 아니 추정을 도와. 추정됐다 심하서로 챘네. 아니 딜라테네 아니 땡가서 좀 딜라테네 아니 샤가 라바 좀 어떻게 좀 도와. 들어왔다. 어떻게 좀 도와. 어떻게
And so, indeed, in all levels of the path, we see how central ethical conduct is, and in the kind of process of aiming to attain liberation from cyclic existence, we are encouraged to perfect the three higher trainings. And so, here it's pointed out that how the higher training of wisdom it cannot be accomplished without being built upon the foundation of concentration. But concentration itself needs the foundation of ethical conduct to be successful. So it's saying without ethics as the basis, we cannot generate concentration. And of course, without concentration, we cannot have that single-pointed perception into emptiness, for that is the mark of wisdom. And so here, as in other presentations, ethical conduct is seen as the foundation of other good qualities that are built upon that ethical conduct.
不是，本来我这可是我俩做个就光家园当现在当大嘛一个的，我这出证的当大怎么样子有个出证大呢？绿的sem当这个的八百五有个八百五中啊呢，光家的大这个有的，当然是等个这get的这个真的，但现在就get的这个的话，我get的快这个这话差这个多，我的他的这出证get真不这，我这出证get真不这，
And so that, even when we endeavor to engage in meditations, and the fact that it doesn't go perfectly for us, it can be related to some fault in our ethical conduct. And so in particular, when we're engaging in the process of meditative concentration, we can see that the distraction is fed by imperfections in our ethical stance, our ethical behavior, our ethical conduct. And so that's very, very important that without the pure ethical conduct, we cannot attain that sort of balance of mind, body and mind that leads to mental and physical pliancy. That is a mark of meditative concentration. And of course, without that concentration, we cannot perceive the emptiness that is a mark of wisdom.
다른 라마 초반에 소다 장서 상하가 동바 이 소다 장서 상하 제배 참래 제배 참 소다가 동바 이내다 상하가 동바 이내다 자주스면도 제배 참 제참 소가 지하면 또 소소 소다 뒤에 잡아놓고 전에 바 로투에 전에 소를 저 가서 제배 참 소가 치야 아니 미당하지 개주도 봤으면 어다 아니 개주对吧개주도 봐甚至对수련 파지 좀 챙길로 소원의 시장 다 같이 어떤 데게 안에에 로이 똑겠네 아니 수련 그 파지 남네 타지 뭐지 난 그거 열어서 어떻게
So again as quoting from the Guru Puja and then referring to our adherence to either the Pratimoksha vows, the Bodhisattva vows, the Tantric vows that each of which can contribute to kind of like the power of mind, the stability of mind, of course, to that allows us to proceed along the path and to work for the benefit of sentient beings. Verse 27, to bodhisattvas who want a wealth of virtue, those who harm are like a precious treasure. Therefore, towards all, cultivate patience without hostility. This is the practice of bodhisattvas.
개별 농주 되게 개설났다. 개와다 촉간에이네 아니 두비에기 아니 배 두비에기 딱 같이 개와디 운에 전에 소설 편도 여봐. 뒷과대 소설 운에 전에 누구 여봐. 배 띵내 워터게지. 임대 되게 개설 다니 전부 된지 아니 개와디게도 소설 운에 타바다 탐지 개별 살아 줘요. 농주소로 차 등계소로 차 되게 여봐다. 먼저는 출라 탐자 좀 돌아도 등계소 들어와. 다 지는 시점은 and then 대도 줘야다. 심지어 탐제도 산제 고마 주에 튕게도 라기 개와사바 되게 차지요. 개와사 되게 저도 개외 농주 되게 개설라서 개외 농주 되게 아니 개설 다니 전부 들라 뇌제 탐자 이제 때다 소스다 소소라 지금 지난 게 뇌제 뇌바 중에 되게 그가 렌징 때나 시지 총대요. 그래서 코나도 세배 냠내게 페이드 신경 유캔거 봐. 세배 냠내게 페이드 키워도 아니 뇌제 탐자 이제 때다서다 너가 개바 될라더니 랑게 서바 검토바 이나 아니 다 같이데 가서다 대치 렉소 강가기 아니 다 계획체 다 납쳐 보지 개바 망고를 좀 거야 집에 가서데 뒤지 통도 지날 줍투 얘기 단대기 다 명아서로 차되게 이때 뇌제 탐자 이제 때다서 대치 꿀라 신데 내가 있다 된대 이마 있어 나라도 심지어 탐대도 산제 고마 되게 이마 이나 좀제 된대 칠 아니 저 소소라다 수지바냐 타바 주고 있는 내가 지고나서 아니 되게 가서다 신대 맞아 막아오 맞지 맞잖아 딜라바 코도 마서 왔잖아 딜잘 맞대 맞잖아 딜 내가 지고질 맞대 맞잖아 타바 주고 딱 그랬어 내가 이 아니 서바 검토와 이나 아니 개설 알리 서바 고마디 개설 알리
And so this points to the practice of patience, of course, and that here, as pointing here, it's saying that to bodhisattvas who want a wealth of virtue. And here it's kind of looking at the purpose of virtue, in fact, and saying that virtue is something that will benefit, and that negativity is that which harms. And so therefore, in the context of the spiritual aspirant, here, virtue is kind of to be regarded as kind of like a store of benefit. And just like when we go on holiday, we see, having enough money, enough dollars as being really helpful and a good basis. Here, we looked at virtue in the same sense, something that's very essential to our cultivation of the path, our advancement on the path. And so in that context, saying patience can be an extremely beneficial source of virtue, because here, when we, those who harm, it says, are like a precious treasure. It's absolutely essential for the development of patience that we have those who harm, who push our buttons, and so on. And so when we meet with external harm in any sense like that, it's very important that we see this as a really incredibly valuable opportunity for virtue, that the benefits that we can accumulate in terms of patience here in that sense are a great treasure for us. And so that is when anybody harms in that sense, to immediately lock into our development of patience, our aspiration to perfect the patience, and that therefore that would bring a great store of virtue. And so, and that from our point of view, this is only natural anyway. From the Bodhisattva's point of view, we are dedicated to working for the benefit of all sentient beings. And so whoever you meet, in whatever situation you meet, whether it's beneficial or harmful, that we can never see anybody as an object of aversion for us, or as an enemy, or as the one that is disliked in any sense like that. And so this is kind of the kind of ground wherein we can perfect our patience, and in doing so accumulate this wealth of virtue, as it says, that will really benefit us on the path.
我大感觉这个感觉这个随便给朋友，俺的看着你们，俺的把我那年把定出把几百呢，定的年把几百亿呢，真的现在打俺的那把几个当说出来根据几个当说出来这主管呢，俺的说出来这告诉了这个叫我准备给俺的推荐这个说这个落了差多少了吧？落了差多少了吧？他这个中间上落单呢。 说个告诉囊最脏了嘛，就囊最脏了，起码呢都考不下来的。哦，囊最脏了就说那把这个的，说成都家那个的，看着啥个了，没几把用个了。但咱们就在顶上的看着你们随便配有这个，要不顶出来是什么单位呢？俺那把这个哦，俺这个说了，叫我准备给那推荐这个有把事情，那可能别略当的。 俺说了，看不出个有吧？他可能看完今年说了，讲完了，看完见了，看完没多，但没得了看到了，真的，他这个都上真的，其他公路的要的要嘛的，现在低等性真的，低等性就用这个就那我唱的，俺这个圣诞节不差的呀，圣诞节不差的，我圣诞节不差的，中国的我到这个我的。但这是中山的三路马当的考不下来，中山的三路当觉得，俺的这个他说的随便搞都不是的，但随便恐怕来他搞都是没，俺的随便恐怕应对，俺的这个吃了蒙蔽给俺的来个这吧打作业，俺的说那个错，俺们那全部杀作业，结巴蒙过了说那个错杀过来，等等呗，就是统统就拿落了，俺们那全部杀作业，等等用来的他。 随便讲的，点用个乐队，用个乐队，俺靠这个，俺现在靠这个，靠这生产业不用也当，俺给了国外用也当，俺这边修杂全部用这当用过的哇。可是呢，这中了，这个那把这个根据这个这中了，这来真的随便的用个乐，这马中了，这来真的随便的用个别乐队，俺的就这个多，但就差个的了，俺靠就差个的，俺靠。 这了那个月是拉不嘛吧？就差个月的，随便就差的，俺呢随便了那个月是可能随便配差点吧。 제가 때는 서버 연구에 돼. 나 내가 좀 전에 먹을 삼았다. 아니 시내 아 시부这个大概这코란热当家说是偏不中国有吧去。那我讲的아니这个你这个国外用也去，真的用也是的。那就是좀 전에 14부 살로 마다나 가보러 와. 야부 살로 마다 미쳐면 저 통해니까 그래서 지당 미 조당 제바이나 지당 당 저기 세티면도 삼로 단주 매게 미 조당 전 미쳐면 요소 통을 와다. 내가 개치 뭐 말이 개치슈데 랑라 팬도 치슈도 가리샤.
So yes, one can see here that where patience is involved, one needs to be able to abide in a sort of a state of conclusion that has come from examining or analyzing through a great deal of reasoning, isn't it? Otherwise, it can be quite difficult. So, for example, looking at the benefits of patience on the one hand and the disadvantages and harms of anger on the other, any kind of hostility like that. This begins the process. We must actually come at like deep down, really look into what are the perceivable benefits of patience from our side, but what are the manifest disadvantages of anger from our side, and looking at it from that to see how, for example, to be able to abide in patience is a facility for the accumulation of great virtue, and to be really convinced of that, very, very helpful. And so it's kind of like really saying you trust in the reasoning here. That's very, very important. This will determine my attitude in any given kind of situation where harm is involved. And so very, very difficult to do this, because we normally kind of react, isn't it, to appearances. You know, the immediate appearance in front of me is that which irritates me, and I'm going to address that. And so it's kind of like you need to be able to create the conducive conditions to choose patience over reaction, really, in situations like that. And so we have to see that if this person is behaving in an unreasonable way towards us, we have to kind of really use a reasoning to come to a point where we kind of say, if what that person is doing is beneficial to them, that's good enough, and leave it at that. And so it's everything that we can do in order to start feeling closer to these kinds of sentient beings, to all sentient beings, but in particular those who are inclined to harm. And to understand that here, when one is able to choose and practice patience, what's happening behind the scenes is tremendous amount of purification of previous negativities that we've engaged in, and the removal of obstacles to practice and so on. That this is something that is so helpful along our practice, as well as removing obstacles to our feeling closer, you know, more empathetic towards our sentient beings, our fellow sentient beings. And so kind of understanding the karma of it too is very, very important, looking at that reasoning. You know, if the cause wasn't there, then this harm wouldn't be manifest for me now. If the cause is there, then that's why this harm is manifest for me now. So there's kind of this sense of acceptance of it. And that, again, it's understood that this is kind of difficult without thinking of the reasonings behind it, without the acceptance also probably of past and future lives, to understand like when causes were created. And so on. So for a person who is just an adherent to one life theory, just kind of sees everything in the context of this one life, perhaps it's difficult for them to choose patience over reaction, because they don't have that breadth of reasoning behind it. But from our point of view, from the Bodhisattva's point of view, we must choose. See what is most important in this context. And that is always to choose patience over an angry reaction.
다가 이제 가서 내가 제대 몸배 온거 내가 지금 열어 봐. 몸배 온게 내가 지금 열어. 뭐 이거 내좀 마시면 온게 안 내가 지금 열어. 내가 제발 때는 아니 저 코로나 내가 열을 때 얘는 내가 마시 받잖아. 코로나 팬도고 유어서 몸배 온게 내가 지금 열어. 다 컨트롤 사야 돼. 몸배 온게 컨트롤 사야 열어. 다 되게 개발 가르쳤어. 개발 좀 봐서 지금 내가 제대 몸배 온거 내가 지금 열어. 아니 나라도 컨트롤 사와이나 컨트롤 사야 돼. 몸배 온거 지금 거. 아니 몸배 생활 두 번이가 집어 차서 와. 집어 차서 와. 다 소송원에 전에 미 남주주 여봐 이나 안디 당가만 와지. 당가만 와지. 몸배 월 만도 몸배 월 도나 랑 판바마. 몸 빠스데 되게 소소 정하라기 거 봐. What did
So again, another reasoning is that when somebody engages in harm towards us, we have to understand that they are operating under the influence of a sort of a confused and ignorant mind. In other words, they are controlled by that mind. But if we are to react with anger, we have to ask the question, are we not also simply under the influence of that confused, ignorant mind? Because we are controlled by now our anger. And so when you look at it in those situations, you see that choosing anger in that context is simply, we have to admit defeat in that situation. We have lost because we have lost control. And that's it's important that we always side with our human intelligence in situations like that, that when somebody is harming us, to understand that they are operating out of control, they are not in control, and that we must make the unmistaken choice in that situation, not to choose anger, but to choose patience.
어디래? 아니 다한테 렌데가 털려 삼로 땅바 이나야. 렌데가 털려 삼로 땅바 이나야. 아니 지금 소소라 너가 개대대. 아니 겨왕아마데 맞잖아. 다 지금 세팅가마이나 딩가마이나 얘네 겨 동사 먹은게는 다리 세신 거 말할 때 이나야. 딘네벨 렌즈 주바 인자. 아니 딜라테네 다 스타린 너바디 용거 여바디 다. 그 릭트베 저부 용다 렌데 남자 중세지 켈랭이나 딩여봐도 다 켈랭 거야지. 아니 그 다른 시가 디아 가서 내줘 로리. 지 용테지. 다 아니 근데 이제 아니 랑기 유튜브네 아니 간사들 아니 녀바사 주고 이거 소리 차되기도 와. 녀바사 주고 이거 소리 차되기도 와. 들을 때도 그 닝지께서 유제 차되기도 와. 당에 겨왕가만 알아 들을 녀바절한테 다리 간사디 아니 다 레녀바사 주는 예소 유튜브 주고도 삼사 정도로 삼로당 유되기도 와. 다가 이제 좀제 처음 망본에 삼로당에 아니 컨디션도 맞아. 지금 제국이요. 어디래?
So also, it's very useful to interject the natural law of cause and effect here into the situation. That when somebody is harming us, for example, it's very clear that this is simply a ripening result of some harmful cause that we have created, whether in previous part of this life or a previous life or any previous life to that. And so it has to be a sense of acceptance of what's going on because of that. This is the way it is, that I have my responsibility, having created the initial cause that is manifesting now as this harm towards me. And so therefore, I have to understand that the only appropriate response in this context is compassion. This person actually has to be a complete object of compassion for me, because I understand the kind of result that may result from his or her act of harming you, and that could be even rebirth in the lower realm. And so that's the way we have to look at it. And indeed, in general, when it comes to choosing like this, the right response, it's very important that we are able to reason from many different points of view, so that we choose the mind of patients over any other reaction.
다한테 제가 조준아 소바 안딜라 라와 유는 내바자라 라와 메는 내바자 사 제바 제온데 아니 라와 메는 내바자 뭐쪽으로서 안 되지도 아니 딜지 컨트롤 사주 잡라 안 딜 니지게 거에 차기 두었어 그데 니지게 두고 만도네 딜 내바자나 싸웠는데 지금 말했어 수고도 와다 되서 되게 되서 삼블스타.
Also from the Body Chapter's way of life, of course, where Shanti David puts it like that, we have to ask when a person is engaged in harm towards us, are they acting under their own control or are they out of control? And that here, that we have to understand that, even people who are out of control even harm their own lives, or take their own lives. So say, there's no way I can be angry in this instance. So we have to swap the possibility of anger for the certainty of compassion in this sense, because we have to be compassionate for somebody who is kind of obviously, acting kind of like out of control and engaging in non-virtue.
다른 그 감성제 다 소소로 너바지가 레스 니사 말에 감성 심제 탐제가 소소로 너바지 바이나로 감성제 가서라 다 가자 감성제 기부터 심제 탐제가 소소로 트네 마가와제네 아니 독자라와 상주와 쉬와 그저 쏴져봐 이나야 소소 셈마 주바제네 아니 네벨 랜들 그마도 섬제 들었네 아니 가서도 스베 파지 좀 용하쇼 what did it but 치코라 달라마 줘봐 드서 요번에 치도 되었잖아 아니 what did some time what did it complete journey.
And so then again from the Guru Puja, this verse which indicates how if all the sentient beings of the three realms of existence should arise in anger to harm me, whether insulting me or whether actually engaging in physical harm towards me or even to kill me, that I will take on all that harm, possible harm on myself, so that they don't have to experience the result of it, and I give all of my virtue towards them, benefit them. And so these kind of words, these kind of verses are very inspirational for us.
What did I bet to go to the Matu Manu de la Tiggy Chancer? And so Matuba did it with a Yana and to be a sick to Comshi Chani, and Comshi Chani, and to go to what a Molum to the Javet. Molum to the Javet to get to me, but I want a minute de la Tiggy Chunks wanted it.
And so these kinds of lines and these kind of inspirational quotes are very helpful for us because, of course, there are times and situations where we're unable to kind of like step into patients and just like that, but we have to be able to slowly develop the habit of trying to choose patience over reaction, over anger in all of these different situations, and also to resort to making fervent aspirational prayers that we will have that strength of mind in the future to be able to abide in patience and so on. And so as well as these kind of aspirational quotes that we can aim towards, these are all helpful in the process of cultivating patience.
That is a Tandatina gave a long to be Casella, Nurture Tamja Rinjeta, so Dechi Kula, Shente Mevayin, Sobakuma Casella, yes, that I judge Narato Tequachimboche, Janju Semper Tomba to the land, that Tequachum Sanjay Komuna to the Yogan Janata, because I gave Longjo condition gave Longjo that you can chat you right, gave Longjo, to get the two watching chatting. What I did is that gave Longjo can you go in to get the any bad Chundu Yasada Chi. What are you? What did you do? And it rejected the Chabanach. What are you about that? Rejected the Chabanach Resha Sons again. Jum say Yana Yan to Samatana? Oh, what did Jabdet Sama Yuba Insa? Jabdet Sama Yuba Insa? And it never near Chungua. And it Namishina. And it law come on to, and then we let on it can make it. So Java in a so Java color, Taka Gasoda dela so check the jamba the ninja come and so check to it tama ma chune tama 지가 알리 소소 소 타이가 와 자와니네 매바이네 dela 포도 자와니네 마사와 안 dela ninja check 디 사베 디과데 안 소소 당돌레네 아니 저도요 와다가 로 고바이 컴베 쳐도 저 당번에 용도야 요 말봐 로 고모도 아니 진짜 제도에 요구지 요구로 와 와다 제 서바고마 게슬라레 해서 어떤
So to bodhisattvas who want the wealth of virtue, those who harm are like a precious treasure. Therefore, towards all, cultivate patience without hostility. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. And so it's really saying here, what is the level at which we need to aim. And so it's kind at the beginning, it's very difficult, isn't it, to be able to think of giving, our body, our wealth, and all our possessions, and all our roots of virtue, etc., to gain this kind of wealth of virtue, to kind of have the right response to whatever harm comes. But it's saying that this is the mark, this is the kind of like the state, and we are see ourselves as Mahayanists, as those who are cultivating this mind of enlightenment, who are on the path to attaining enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. And here we have to kind of enthusiastically enter into the path of patience, as it were, and to proceed with as much reasoning as we can possibly imagine. And to actually really start accepting the reasoning enough to really transform our minds, to understand that the reasoning is kind of validly backed up, that they are kind of valid cognizers that we are dealing with. So if we can apply the reasoning in so many different cases, we will slowly build up the habit of patience, the choosing patience kind of automatically and spontaneously in situations where previously we weren't able to. And so we have to kind of like really grow our patience, as it were, as a habit, as a kind of first response. And so in a situation ultimately where, we are about to undergo the ultimate harm, in other words, we are going to die, we're going to be killed, that in that situation, we can actually really choose love and compassion as our response. Where there is no hope, that we know we're going to die, we can choose love and compassion as our response. No inkling of harm will be in our thoughts. We have full acceptance of what situation we're in, because we have seen the reasoning underpinning it. It's very, very important. And to know that, there's nothing that does not become easy through habituation. And so therefore, to really choose patience more and more and more, and choose as much reasoning to kind of fuel that patience as much as possible. That is the practice of a bodhisattva.
계속 도면서 다들 차비들 제겐 계속 도면서对吧这배 아니 근데 전다도 근데 부와 먹부피 오프닝 부와 먹부피 아니 부와 되게 된다 배운데 아니 근데 뒤에 가서데 작바들의 구마저들의 투네 구마게 아니 좀 있어 왔다 공부가 촌 강가 촌사도 아니 공부다 오다 그나로 뭐하지네 그것도 펜터가 쇼 뭐하지 아니 그것도 콘솔 남가 조사데 그나라 부와 부게 전다서 요사 남가라 파 두고 있어 구마 뭐도 되네 파 주스 되네 도나 그나라 부와 부게 전다서 남가 키고 있어 봐 대도 요라 요거래도 어때네 뭐도 제가 되네 도나 자고 요 말 제가 되네 주 남가 된 나디 내 캐나 르 사와이 캐나도 가서 셈네 르 사와이 아니 캐나도 펜토와 쇼스 뭐 제사와이 다 저도 되네 좋아이나 아니 나라 피고 전다 주 남가 키게 아니 캐나도 요라 시게 되네 뭐도 제가 되네 주 남가 된 뭐다 되노
I guess I took my sangbo. Yeah. There's a wonderful story associated with Gyaltsen Tokme Sangbo, the author of this text, the 37 practices, where at one stage he was traveling and he was accosted by bandits, and they bailed him up and they said, "That's it, you have to give me all your possessions." And he, of course, gladly handed them over. and you know, made offering that they would that they would be able to take them without any negativity whatsoever, and freely gave all his possessions, which well, didn't amount to much anyway. And so the thieves then turned and started off along the usual road. But Dogme Sangwa stopped them and said, "Oh, so sorry. Wait, don't go that way, because you go through the village where my benefactor is living, and he'll recognize the possessions that you've taken, and you might get into trouble. So don't go that way. Go another way. There's a side road. You go along there so that you don't get caught." And so this is very good story. So these are the you know, the enlightened kind of like responses of the holy beings that are a good example for us. So let's leave it at that for today. Any questions on today's?
and ko yude na matu ma de ni mare mani de and de mani batagal semsha and de de and mani be lo tagana and ni making was you so samsacha and what the and de ta semja tamje ge do da ka sanje ko mo yo ni to ba ma de 지금 또 to ba ji samsa samsta and de de lo de ta ge ji ko ji so so ra ge ji and ba de za la ma de ta ge ji wa be ka na ku so do wu za do so de so de je wal da tambe ka zo pe so de ni ba ka zo shu sun be ka zo ten chu sanje ko ma ma do ba jo ta ya bu shu so so samsa ko ba she de de ya la to ba me de ta je ba pi ko de cha.
And so then we bring our minds to visualize on the central and single figure in our mirror field, Guru Chenrezig, and that we begin the process of inviting them to our crown by preparing the lotus sun and moon disk mandala seat on our crown. And this begins by contemplating on renunciation. And from that development of renunciation, reminding ourselves of the fact that cyclic existence is in the nature of suffering, wanting that definite emergence from that state. From that comes the manifestation of renunciation in the form of the lotus disc mandala. And then contemplating on the one who is the self that is aspiring on the path, that thinking of that I and that self, asking, is it to be found in the body? Is it to be found in the mind? And then through the analysis, investigating of that objectively existent self as to where it is, and reaching that point of investigation where is simply the not finding of the object of negation. And from that actual contemplation arises the sun disk mandala seat. And again, through contemplating on that that path leading to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, that mind of enlightenment, arising the moon disk mandala seat. And then our invocation verse: "O glorious and precious Guru, come take your lotus and moon seed placed here on my crown. Keep me safe in your kindness. Bestow on me the attainments of body, speech, and mind." We reciting that 3 times. At the end of the first recitation, the replica body comes on the journey towards our crown, At the end of the second, they arrive, they are seated on our crown. And at the end of the third, we have the assurance that they will remain steadfast until we attain the state of enlightenment. And that brings a sense of absolute joy to the mind. This is wonderful.
아니 되네 되네 다기 내신 저는 연중 삼로다 연중 셈디 로티니 아니 라기닝데 페마타제 교소스 코마셰 되네 저 가서도 다가저 되네 냠레 저하고 소소 제주 많이 왔다가라 아니 되네 가서도 라시가 마주가 예베 로티 아니 가서도 니마经过 조사가 엔터넷 심지어 탐제 사야 고만 요원 마도 지금 토바치기 선전 로지 삼로다 되네 준비가 로티니 아니 다외经过 조사서 되네 반대 자발라 마도 다기 니가 보면 그냥 고선도 고를 자도 되네 순대자 담배 가서 패 니베 가서 쇼스마 때도 좀 사야 고만 마도 제수 삼사제 되네 되네 페마다가 개바데 근데 남주닝네 단에 전대 또 저거 생각하고 같이 되네 그래서 어머니 빼매고 되네 많이 잘 숨게 거티겠지 되네 엄마 알아봤다 나 디디디디디디디 서제레스 자매양 청아인데 거티겠지 되네 되네가 오비에 담아 해도 다다가 너무 마셔만나 소스 되네 지금 나숨 거티겠지 되네 당연히 님 그래서 라마제레스 네버디 아니 고소풀라 외세트나 랑게 집어네 간디가 팔라 외세트나 루게 난타데 외기 차발라 되네 랑게 다 간제저 루고네 소지와 마제말라와 미사와 저와다 다 어레다 미사와 저와다 로임 다 가지네 같은 되자 아니 다가네 신기 제가서도 주 타마 주종하게 나세네세 로달라서 다 간제 쳇딜라 사바 생가마 가마 토마 메반의 사베다 제가 내가 룽아 예수부터는 내가 간디 사요 바이나 다가니 신게 지금 자주스베 도마켈레 자주스베 도백도네 아니 제가 자도다 내제라 소바카 계획 내가 가르치고 다가니 상하게 도마켈레네 상하게 도백도네 아니 제가서 야한테 되게 내가 가르사와요 맞다 단체 배바 장치 다서 조수 선수죠 장치 다네 근데 제가 하나랑 좀 하도 그 장치 다네 다 간자지 가서다 마시와 조소 선수 되게 아니 최주베 다 튕겨라 랑게데 가서 다 루 마데와 타워데 요는 되게 마시와 조소 선수 되네 자롱 틸레 겨데 와데 시와 조소 선수 sure and then 학도 뉴도 산제 고마 타와라 아메 파메가 나시도 교회 뭐여서 파메 나시 교회 탐제 장네 아니 교회 탐제 장네 가나타자 다과랑 샤 바치 차도 어떻게 바다 저 최주에 튕제 푸드소바 조소 서서 고바시
And so now we begin to prepare the lotus sun and moon seed at our heart in preparation for the coming of Lama Chen Rezig there. And again, contemplating renunciation to give rise to the lotus disc mandala. And then that self of looking into the body and mind, not finding that objectively existent self, and the mere negation of the object of negation. From that mind itself arising the sun disc mandala seed, and then through the contemplation on the mind of enlightenment itself, establishing the moon disc mandala seed. And then our invocation verse again, O glorious and precious root Guru, come take your lotus and moon disc, placed here on my heart, keep me safe in your kindness, bestow on me the attainments of body, speech, and mind. At the end of the first recitation, the figure of Chen Rezig moves down through our central channel. At the end of the second, arrive there at the seat prepared at our heart center. And at the end of the third, that assurance that they will remain steadfast until we attain enlightenment. And that brings forth a surge of joy and happiness in our minds that we are confident of the assistance of Lama Chen Rezig until then. Then the petals of the lotus fold over, are kind of then sealed at the tip by a 5-pronged white vajra and encircled by the Om Mani Padme Hum mantra in a clockwise direction, the Om Arapat Sanati mantra of Manjushri in an anti-clockwise direction, and the mantra of dependent origination in a clockwise direction. And then from within automatically, light rays begin to emanate from the central figure, permeating the lotus petals, and indeed all of our body, from the tip of our crown to the soles of our feet. And in doing so, every cell is kind of filled with light, purifying all negativities that we have accumulated in this life, for example, associated with the 10 non-virtues of killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, of harsh speech, divisive speech, lying and idle gossip, of malicious intent and covetousness and wrong view associated with those 10 non-virtues, all of which are completely and utterly nullified and purified. But also all of the faults that we have accrued in relation to our taking on any of the other patimoksha vows, or the bodhisattva vows, or the tantric vows, again, and all of the naturally occurring faults that we have involved ourselves in, and those kind of vows prescribed by the Buddha that we have broken, and that all of these are completely and utterly purified. Any circumstance rendering discomfort to our body, illness, sickness, any discomfort at all, that again is also dispelled and purified. And all the faults associated with the channels, winds, and drops, and the elements of the body are completely purified, so that we are feel the sense of absolute purification of any problem, fault, negativity, obscuration, obstacle in our physical, mental state associated not just with this life, but all previous lives going back to beginningless time are completely gone. And then we feel this endowment of all the conducive qualities and energies that we need to fulfill our path, to quickly fulfill the path.
제레스가 고들 현지 지금 제도 소소 셈 소소류의 라마 제레스 꼴로 주소서 소소 신도 저 셈데 니랭차 라마 제레스가 투들 현지 지금 제도 소소 셈데 라마 제레스가 툴로 저 랑을 룽아 유소다 라마 제레스 구송도 뭐 예매 차소서 네디야 라마 제레스가 다간자 셰할로 조소 섬사자 근데 대화도 대도 뉴스 베이시 교소서 다 라마 제레스 교에 투가래 아니 왜서 저네 셈데 장도는 왜서 저나 되나 어제 대다다 심지어라 소소 파 대다다 라마 제레스 구조도 뭐 예매 차소 네 대다다 아니 라마 제레스가 다시 한칸도 조소 소소 다 가자 조아리 도게 다 레뉴게 상황 주가 심지어다 대다다 아니 레뉴게 상황을 타네 아니 라마 제레스 고마 토소다 야고 시고 토소 가고 아니 가고 다니 제다 라마 제레스 심지어 라마 제레스 고마 토바타 대체도 수수 겨와 가르투바타 다 두고 소소 저 위대한 뭐가 또 팔다 잠데 대 대화데 대도 대도 있으면 시켜 소소 고마시
So then, through the combination of my own more subtle wind acting as the substantial cause, with the body of Chenrezig acting as the cooperative conditions, my own body is transformed into the enlightened body of the Buddha. And again, through the combination of my own more subtle mind acting as the substantial cause, with the mind of Chenrezig acting as the cooperative conditions, my own mind is automatically transformed into the enlightened mind of a Buddha. And now I see myself as my body, speech, and mind is inseparable from the enlightened body, speech, and mind of Chenrezig. That is something which is really, really wonderful. The place that I'm in is also transformed of all fault and becomes the enlightened abode of an enlightened being. That I feel a sense of bliss which combines with voidness, and I abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and voidness. And then seeing myself like this, as a fully enlightened being, I send out light rays from my heart center, equal in number to all the sentient beings in existence. This light wave goes out, and I'm touching all the sentient beings. And they are purified of all negativity, all fault, all karmic fault and obscuration, and all their afflicted mindsets. And so they spontaneously arise as fully enlightened Chenrezig. And also their abodes, their place, any of the 6 realms in which they're existing there, places are purified of all fault and they are transformed into the enlightened palatial abode of an enlightened being. And so this is a wonderful, again, that I rejoice here that we experience that sense of bliss, combining with voidness, and abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and voidness. I'm also contemplating that both Chen Rezig and the virtue that I'm accumulating, and I as the agent accumulating that, are something which is completely empty of any objective existence and is merely imputed by thought.
我的恐怕是，我到底这个当然俺那说的三罗当然没法一件啥不的，但这个人话说的是，一那样，但这个当然的叫我啥不的。Sabati and Chicasona, Saviosona Geneta, Newton, that the summer town, whenever I do to any Curicua shows, so what the combat.
So even though we know we're operating at the level of imagination here, of hope, of aspiration, that nevertheless we hope that through the virtue accumulated here, that we dedicate all of that so that we may quickly make it manifest for real.
我的，我这今天上了当晚的，我的真的当，这是牛的牛的，就是我说我的恐怕些，我的这，叫我的
牛的老三个。 Lo Sandra Shalom Mig You are of luck, Vishavara, great treasure from passion not aimed at true existence, and Manjushri, master of flawless wisdom, as well as Vajrapani, destroyer of hordes of demons without exception. Sankapa, crown jewel of the sages, and land of snows, Lo Sankapa. At your feet, I lay my breasts.
Also, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kenla.
Thank you.
Thank you,
You
Genla.
know,
Kuchana.
you know,
Thank you.